Hello, and welcome to Interviews by Kathleen, where I dive into the fascinating world of authors, publishers, editors, narrators, illustrators, and more. I am your host, Kathleen Osborne. I write science fiction, romance with aliens. I published 3 novels, and I'm the founder of Transcendent Authors, a group of multiple authors with multiple genres and countries. Together, we write anthologies. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce you to my friend, Beth Freely, whose latest book, just hit #1. Beth, tell us about first off, tell us about how you got into writing and at what
Oh my
age.
gosh. I've been writing all my life. I'm sure people have heard of a little movie called Star Wars.
Uh huh.
I was 6 when that came out, 6, 7, 6. Um, and I always had a very active imagination. So that really kind of sparked everything. And I remember some of the very first um, stories that I ever managed to bang out on my grandmother's old typewriter were Star Wars fan fictions. Um, and then in third grade, we all had to write a book, for the third grade book writing contest. And I
Mm.
won with my little book called Topaz and His Adventure. And that book was in the Central Valley Elementary School in New York's library up until they consolidated all the schools about 10, 15 years ago. And I don't know whatever happened to it, but that's probably where the real onus of me writing and becoming a writer started, was with that. I lived in England for a year and a half. I remember my mother getting called to school to talk to the headmaster because my teacher was so impressed with a short story that I wrote based on some characters from a kids show over in England that I had watched, maybe about 6 months worth of. And she was so impressed with, my writing that she took it to the headmaster and showed the headmaster, and he called my mom. And I thought I was in trouble. I wasn't. And it's just kind of kept going from there. I wrote a lot of fan fiction in my teens and early 20s, to the point where I started having people say, "Hey, you need to enter your fan fiction in some of these contests or share it on some of these boards." When the old-fashioned chat boards were still a big thing, and so I did. I entered some of my fan fiction for a TV show called Farscape into some
Yeah.
contests, and I started winning contests. And I'm going, okay. Um, and then I started sharing my stories with people, and I developed this following, um, that quite a few of those people still follow my writing today. One of those people is my best friend Miriam, who's also a co-author on one of my books. Um, and from there, it turned into I'm going to send you a link to this contest. One of the girls sent me a link to a writing contest, and the top prize was a publishing contract. And before I could decide whether or not I wanted to enter it, Miriam had paid the $25 entry fee, and I was like, okay, let me see what I got. Um, and all that fan fiction writing paid off because my first novel, Behind the Eyes of Dorian Gray, won first place in women's fiction in 2005. Um, and I won a traditional publishing contract. So
Wow.
that's the story in a nutshell. So
Wow.
I haven't looked back since.
Now, I know because we've talked and we're friends,
Hmm.
you write multiple genres. What is your favorite?
So I write romance. I am a romance author. I write multiple subgenres of romance, um, because I have contemporary, I have historical, I have sci-fi. I have paranormal. Um, I have a motorcycle club, which is also paranormal. Um, my favorite, though, historical. There's something about the deep dive into history and working with historical elements that I love. And I had forgotten how much I loved doing the historical research until I started working on the most recent book. And then I was like, you know what, this is what I like to write. I like to write historical. And when I say historical, it doesn't necessarily mean, going all the way back to like the golden age of piracy or going back to the time of the Tudors. Historical to me could be the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh yeah, because
so
so much has happened.
yeah, yeah. And you got to figure here we are in the 2020s. So the 1920s is now 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a wealth of things to pull from. Um, up to World War II. Anything beyond World War II, I consider contemporary, but up through World War II and back for me is all historical and is a wealth of history to play with, and I really, I like writing. I like writing the contemporaries; they're fun. I like writing the paranormals. I tend to write those when I'm in a mood. But the historicals are my favorite.
Yeah, I know I like to write paranormal,
Hmm.
and I like to look at history and use that, but I put it in the future
Yep.
or on a different planet.
Yeah. Yeah. Which
And
I
and
actually
it
I actually had an idea last night that I'm going to try, which is it's a sci-fi cyberpunk samurai. Don't know if I
a
could pull it off.
samurai.
Samurai. Um, I am currently in my Japan era. I'm just going to say that right now. I'm in my Japan era. So, but yeah, I mean, I wanted to. I figure that could be a fun mashup. Cyberpunk
It,
samurai.
I think so. I just there's so many avenues you can go with that.
Especially with sci-fi. There's
Hmm.
almost nothing you can do with sci-fi. That's the beauty of writing sci-fi.
Yeah, and the fact that using samurai techniques because you're on spaceships, you can't use or they don't want you to use a blaster or anything like that inside a spaceship because it
Right,
can puncture the
right,
wall. And there
right.
you go. You could be sucked out, the
You'd
whole
be
ship
sucked
could
out.
be
Yep.
destroyed.
Give
Yeah,
me a
so you
katana and
have
I'm
to
good to
use
go.
swords.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah. So cyberpunk
now
samurai. We'll see how that works.
now this uh newest one,
Hmm.
what would you say sets it apart from your other top runners? Because I know you've won awards for other books, other works, but does what is it about this one? Because I know you've cried over it and you've
Yeah,
laughed over it,
yeah.
and
This
so have
one,
your beta readers. So,
this one, I refer to this one. This one's a love letter to myself. Um, the research and the way this book flowed out of me. I've always okay. So I've always wanted to write a feudal Japanese samurai book for a very long time. I've always been told, oh, it's a very hard genre to get into. No, it's not. Not if you do the research. If you actually do the research and if you're willing to take the time and be true to the culture, true to who the samurai were, who the people of Japan were during the shogunate, during the Tokugawa shogunate, and Edo Japan. It, there's absolutely no reason why you can't write it. Um, and this book was, like I said, it was a love letter to myself. I have written, this is book number 13, And while I love aspects of all of my books, the last couple of books that I've done, I have felt like they were not my best work. I have felt like I shorted myself as a writer. I mean, people have enjoyed the books; they love them, and um, they've done well. But I myself was maybe not 100% happy with them. Um, and so when I got the idea for Love of a Samurai, I sat down, I started doing the research. I sat down and I pulled together the very detailed outline that I used with Beyond the Steps of Stone. Um, the same kind of detailed outline Miriam and I used when we wrote The Legend of Captain St. Pierre. And when I say detailed outline, I basically write an outline and then I blow it out almost into a rough draft right away. And then I just keep expanding and expanding and layering. And it was the process. It really was the process to bring this book together. And the story just flowed so easily after I sat down and I did all the research and I deep dived into it. Even as I was finalizing the edits, I was still double checking things because I wanted to make sure it was right. I
Oh,
wanted to make
yes.
sure it was as historically accurate as I could get it. Um, and it just, this one just, it's lucky number 13. And it's
Mhm.
just, like I said, it was a love letter to myself. This book is also the longest book I have ever published at 780 pages, almost 790 pages, laid out
Wow.
completely. She's thick.
Wow. I
She's thick.
just I I thought I was doing good with, 108, 110,000 words, which is about 350, 400 pages. And that got whittled down to less than 80,000 words. But
Yeah.
it it boggles my mind to but I also know when you do the research that you did, it's going to, because people didn't, we don't have anybody that lived back then. So
Right.
they're going to
Right.
want to know the descriptives, the
Yeah.
place setting, all of that, the senses, everything. And I can't applaud you enough for
Mhm.
verifying your facts
Oh, yeah.
be-
Yeah.
because you and I both know we've been in this industry long enough.
Mhm.
Your readers check.
Oh, they do. They do.
Yes.
And and we live in a society now where everything has to be politically correct, and people scream, "Oh God, cultural appropriation." Well, if somebody's going to scream cultural appropriation about Love of the Samurai, I'm going to make sure that they're not screaming about it because it's not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So I made sure it was accurate, at least as
Yeah.
accurate as I could get it. I mean, I still question, in the back of my mind, I'm still questioning, well, should it have been Kasode or should it have been Kimono? Well, they're kind of in,
Yeah.
they're kind of interchangeable. It's, the term kimono really didn't even come into play until Edo period
Yeah.
Japan.
And if you're in a different era, you have to
Mhm.
stick with that
Yeah.
because
So
somebody,
somebody will look. The funny thing is Kasode was actually still being used as a term in Edo period Japan when the book is placed. Um, so if that is the only thing that I might have gotten wrong, I mean, fine, that's great. Um, but I there's a whole scene where Helena helps Ujio put on his samurai armor, and I'm sitting there going, how do they wear this? How did they put this on? And I actually went and looked up how I typed into Google, how does a samurai put on his armor? And there was a historical document written by a professor in Japan explaining exactly the steps of putting their armor on, which, by the way, they put on from the bottom up. Um, And this is the kind of details that I wanted in the book. And I'm like, okay, got to rewrite that scene because I had it backwards. But that was fine. I didn't mind rewriting the scene because I wanted it right.
Correct. And is that after writing this, what is an advice you would give someone who is new and maybe they've had one book published, but they've stumbled onto something that is going to be their grand opus? What
Throw
would
show don't
you?
tell. Throw show don't tell out the window. Throw that piece of writing advice completely out the window. And I say that, and I tell the authors I edit for the same thing. Okay. You're writing to your voice. You're not writing to a set of rules and laws that some publisher or editor 50 years ago thought was a great thing to say. If you want to sit there and describe what the room looks like to your readers, do it. Tell them what it looks like. Tell them so that they understand exactly what they're looking at. Um, Especially if you're writing historical anything, historical fiction, if you're writing nonfiction trying to explain something, put the details in it. Who cares? Make it rich, make it immersive. And the only way you can make it rich and immersive like that is if you throw show don't tell out the window. There are places you want to tell. I'm not saying do a data dump. Spread
Yeah.
your description out, make it interesting. But don't be afraid to put the description in there because somebody said, "Oh, show don't tell." That is the worst advice for a writer I have ever heard in my entire life. And it's one that I threw out the window when I first wrote Behind the Eyes of Dorian Gray, and I threw it out the window when I wrote Love of a Samurai, and I will keep throwing it out the window.
That's good advice because there is a time that you tell, and there is
Yes.
a time that you show.
Yeah.
You can't be someone that you're not. And a
Exactly.
book has to reflect the personality of the author.
Yes. Yes.
It's and any editor, this is my opinion, any editing done is up to the author if they want to accept it or not.
Yes. And I tell the authors I edit for, here's my suggestions. Here's my critique. Here's where I think you can add stuff. Here's where I think you can take stuff away. You can take this. I'm done with it now. Here it is back to you. You take it, do what you want with it, because ultimately it is your voice.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately you need to be happy with the story. And if you think I'm full of caca, that's fine. I'm not going to get insulted. This is my thought. This is my opinion. You asked me to edit it. Now, of course, if it's punctuation and grammar, kind of leave that in there, guys. But
Yeah,
if
exactly.
it's
Yeah.
if it's story critique, okay, if I suggest that you take this scene out because I think it's extraneous, and you're going, no, I want it. It makes sense to me. It's important to the story. Okay, then leave it in there. Ultimately, it is your voice. It is your vision. This is your story.
Yeah.
If you want to tell throughout the entire story, knock yourself out. If you want to show through the entire story, knock yourself out. If you want to write your story in nothing but bizarre hieroglyphics with a translating code to it, go for it because it's yours. And I can't stress that enough to authors. I've had so many authors come back to me and say, well, my editor said, well, okay, but how do you feel about it? I come from this point of view because I actually had that happen to me. I had an editor tell me, you can't have two romances in a book and you can't have two main female leads in a book. And when I told her, yeah, but if I lessen the role of the other female, the book doesn't work. Well, it doesn't fit the romance formula. This was the Legend of
Too
Captain
bad.
St. Pierre. Yeah, this was the Legend of Captain St. Pierre. Legend of Captain St. Pierre only works because it's about twin sisters.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I get told all the time you can't have as many people as I have in the
Yes,
first
you can.
chapter,
Yes, you can.
but you can.
You can.
They tell me people are gonna get lost with the characters, and I said
No, they won't.
they're not because I use them throughout the story.
Mhm.
And when I introduce a new character, it's because it's needed later.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
it will build. I use a product that to help analyze my writing,
Hmm.
and it comes back and it says you write very complexly but excellently.
It's pretty much it's similar to what it told me with Love of a Samurai because I use the same product.
Yeah,
So
and because
yeah.
it told me it says you have three subplots,
Yes, I know. Thank you.
and it works.
And I
This
will tie up all of the subplots with a happy little bow at the end of the book. Trust me, I know what I'm
Yes,
doing here.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you have to. And so if I will say this, that I have had people tell me, ask yourself, this is editors, if it really is necessary, that scene that they're recommending, because my editors always recommend, they don't tell me.
Hmm. Hmm.
They recommend, and they'll explain why. They'll say, it doesn't do anything to the story, it
Right.
doesn't move it along. And that's what your readers really want to do is move along to the next scene. And so I have to really think about that. And one of the things I did, because I call it killing my darlings, I created
Killing
a
your darlings.
file
Yeah.
for each book
Hmm.
and I put them in there. So when I write a sequel, if I need some of that, it's
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Or if you want to write a short story that goes with the main
Yeah.
book, you've got the set. So that's another piece of advice that I would tell authors right there. You chop a scene, don't delete it. Just stick it over in a folder. I have like 5 scenes that I took out of Love of a Samurai that I've sat in a folder. And when I started writing Love of a Samurai, it was supposed to be a one-off. I now have 2 sequels plotted out, and those scenes have already found homes.
Mm-hmm.
So never delete your scenes. Oh, please don't delete them. Chop them out of the book, stick it in a new Word document, put it in a folder for later.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best thing you can do.
Yes. Yes. And how do you feel? Because we've never talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
Being a self-published or being a traditional published author, which do you think is the wiser course and why?
That's up to each individual. That really, as someone who has been both traditionally published and is now self-published, I will never knock anyone who either starts out self-published and wants to go the traditional route or who automatically jumps into the traditional route. Yes, it's infinitely harder to get traditionally published. Um, and to be fair, you have to have a spine. You have to have a spine to deal with all the rejection letters. So if you decide you're going to go traditionally published, make sure you are ready for the rejection letters because you're going to get more of those rejection letters before you get an actual offer. So just be ready for that and continue writing. Um, I went self-published after my publisher closed. At the end of 2019, I got an email from Arch Books saying that they were closing their doors and that as of January 1st, 2020, all the rights for Behind the Isidorian Grey and The Legend of Captain St. Pierre had been reverted back to me. After the experience I had with that particular editor at Arch Books, that caused Miriam and I to dig in our heels for 9 years before we finally got Legend of Captain St. Pierre published.
Oh,
And after doing, oh yeah, um, after doing all the marketing for both of those books on my own anyway, Um, I made the conscious decision to say, screw this. I'm going self published because I refused to give creative control back to someone who felt my vision needed to be changed because it didn't fit in some little formula. I wish to retain the creative control. And that is why I went self published. So if you feel the need to retain your creative control and you feel like you are not going to have that, go self published. You're going to do the same amount of marketing work anyway. It, it's
Mm-hmm.
very rare nowadays to find a publisher or mostly a publisher that's going to do the marketing for you. This is why they typically tell you to find an agent first. Get an agent. They'll pitch it out to publishers. They'll help set up your book signings. They'll do this. They'll do that. An agent and a publisher, yes, will give you more exposure. So there is pros and cons to both sides of it. But for me, unless I can find a publisher or an agent that says, yeah, well, you can keep creative control, I will stay self-published.
I totally agree. And
Yeah.
I'm not a control freak, but I
Oh, I'm
don't
not either. But
I want what I wrote.
mm-hmm,
Like you, I cry, I laugh inside as I'm writing. What I'm putting on paper, it's it's what I meant it to be. My
mm-hmm,
name is on it, and by golly, it's going to stay on it, and it's going to be what I wrote,
mm-hmm.
not what somebody else ad hoc changed. And it's going to go out when I want it to go out.
Yeah, yeah. I'll set my own deadlines. Thank you. I put enough pressure on myself setting my own deadlines, let alone having an agent or a publisher tell me when I have to have something ready. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I kind of drive my husband nuts when it comes to
God knows I
my
drive mine
deadlines.
nuts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. He says, "You're
Yeah.
putting this pressure on yourself," and I'm like, "I
Yeah,
know, but it's
I
got to come
know.
out."
Yep.
Yes. There is one other question I have before we
Mhm.
close out, and it's if you wrote a book about your life, what would the title be?
That is a good question. The life and times of a wannabe Jedi. Life and times of a wannabe Jedi. Yep. Star Wars has always played such a big part in my life. Um, growing up in upstate New York with an acre and an eighth of land, when that movie came out, I was constantly running around shooting invisible stormtroopers and letting my imagination run wild. And always thought the Jedi were cool. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Most people who know me know that my favorite character is Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader. So they would be like, "Wait a minute, you're saying Jedi are cool, but you're a Sith fan?" Yeah, well, it's Anakin. He started out as Jedi, so there you go. Um, so yeah, the life and times of a wannabe Jedi. Henry VIII's seventh wife.
I
No,
think that is
no. I
Henry
wouldn't have wanted.
VIII's seventh wife.
I wouldn't have wanted to be Henry VIII's seventh wife. That man had issues.
Oh no,
But yeah.
no, no, no. The idea. Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. But it's a fun
Oh,
historical error. So it is a fun historical error to play with.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It really is. And it can be used in any time.
Oh yeah,
You
for
don't
sure.
have to
For sure.
just look at it historically. You just need the laws and
Yeah,
the
that's the biggest
culture.
thing is understanding
Bring
the
that
laws and the
forward
culture. Yeah.
and put it in it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much for joining
Thank
me
you.
today, Beth, on Interviews by Kathleen. And I hope everyone has enjoyed our time together. Don't forget to click on the slides afterwards. It's going to have all of the information on how to contact Beth, also where she's going to be, where you can get a book signed by her or even purchase one and she'll sign it for you. And also the different things that I'm involved in where you can come. Stay tuned for more exciting interviews and discussions. Until next time, keep exploring and stay inspired. Bye.
Bye bye.